Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a platform that says it can tell the future. And not with a crystal ball, but with cold, hard cash. We are, of course, talking about Polymarket. So let's just start with a big question. What if there was a place you could go right now to see the real-time probability of pretty much any major event? I'm talking elections, economic data, you name it. And what if that place was consistently more accurate than the polls, or even the expert pundits you see on TV? I know, it's a bold claim, right? But that's the whole idea behind this new kind of information market. And that brings us to the core philosophy driving the platform we're talking about today. Polymarket's whole operation boils down to this really simple but powerful three-word mission. The idea is, well, it's that when people have actual skin in the game, real money on the line, they're forced to find the most accurate information. It's about cutting through all the noise, the bias, the hot takes.
Okay, so how on earth does that even work? Well, the easiest way to think about it is like a stock market. But instead of trading stocks or gold, you're trading on the truth itself. So the technical term for this is a prediction market. And just like we said, instead of buying shares in, say, Apple or Tesla, you're buying shares in the outcome of a real-world event. Things like, will inflation be above 3% next quarter? Or will this particular bill pass Congress? You can literally trade on it. And you know what? Since it launched back in 2020, Polymarket has absolutely exploded to become the world's largest platform in this space. So who cares, right? Why does this even matter? Well, here's the kicker. Study after study shows that these markets are often way better at forecasting than traditional polls or even expert analysis. It all comes down to this really cool principle called the wisdom of the crowds. See, by making people put their money where their mouth is, the market basically sucks in all the available information out there. News, data, even whispers of insider knowledge, and boils it down into a single, live, constantly updating number. It's a system that pays you to be right, not just loud. Okay, so if the wisdom of the crowds is the engine, how do you actually get behind the wheel and start trading? Let's break down how it actually works on Polymarket. And honestly, it's probably simpler than you think. Everything on Polymarket comes down to one core concept. The price of a share is the probability. So when you see a price like this one, that's not just some random number. It means the market, the collection of all traders, believes there's an 18% chance of that thing happening. And this is crucial. These prices are not set by Polymarket. They're set entirely by you, the users, through supply and demand. They move up and down in real time as news breaks and people's opinions change. So the actual process is pretty simple. First, you pick an event you're interested in and you buy shares for either yes, it will happen, or no, it won't. As people trade, the share prices move around anywhere between $0 and $1. Now here's the payoff. If you're right, every single one of your shares cashes out for a full dollar. So let's say you bought a yes share for 18 cents and the event happens. Boom, you just made 82 cents of profit on that share. Of course, if you're wrong, the share goes to $0. But here is the absolute game changer. This is what turns it from a simple bet into a real dynamic trading market. You do not have to wait until the very end. Let's say you buy yes shares at 20 cents and some good news comes out and the price shoots up to 60 cents. You can sell right then and there and lock in your profit. On the flip side, if things are looking bad, you can sell to cut your losses. It's a living, breathing marketplace for probabilities. Okay, so to run a market this dynamic, you need some serious horsepower under the hood. So what's powering this whole thing? Well, the secret sauce is its decentralized technology. Polymarket is actually built on a really clever stack of tech. Let's break it down. For security and trust, it all sits on the Ethereum blockchain. That means every single transaction is out there in the open, verifiable by anyone. But Ethereum can get slow and pricey. So to fix that, it uses Polygon, which is basically an express lane built on top of Ethereum. That's what makes trades super fast and keeps the fees really, really low. And to avoid crazy price swings, everything is traded in USDC. That's a stablecoin that's always worth $1. So you're betting on events, not the fluctuating price of crypto. And finally, it uses a hybrid trading model, which tries to give you the best of both worlds. And what I mean by that is it gives you the speed of a traditional exchange with the rock-solid security of the blockchain. Here's how it pulls that off. When you place an order, it gets matched instantly on a super fast private server. Think of it like the New York Stock Exchange. But the actual settlement, the part where the money changes hands, that gets recorded on the public blockchain where it's permanent and transparent. It's a really smart trade-off, right? You get speed without giving up on that all-important trust. Now, of course, whenever you innovate this much, especially in the world of finance, you're going to turn some heads. And for Polymarket, that has meant a really dramatic and frankly challenging dance with regulators. Yeah, this timeline really tells a wild story of conflict and comeback. So, back in early 2022, the big US regulator, the CFTC, basically came down hard on Polymarket, hitting them with a $1.4 million fine and forcing them to block all US users. But that wasn't the end of the story. Fast forward to 2024, and Polymarket makes a huge move. They acquire a firm that's already regulated by the CFTC, basically buying a legal pathway back into the country. So now, with the big investigation set to conclude in mid 2025, it looks like a fully compliant legal US relaunch could be just around the corner.
So, with the US comeback looking more and more likely, it makes you wonder, what does a world with a mainstream poly market actually look like? And that brings us to the biggest question of all. What is the future of information?
Well, for one thing, this decentralized model has some pretty clear perks for users. For starters, Polymarket itself has zero trading fees. Yep, zero. We already talked about how you can sell your shares anytime you want, but maybe one of the biggest things is that you're trading against other users peer-to-peer. There's no house that's trying to beat you. And that means there's no risk of getting banned just because you're winning too much, which, as you might know, is a huge complaint in traditional betting. But this whole technology also kicks up this massive debate, and it's one that regulators everywhere are struggling with. On one hand, you have the view that this is a legitimate financial tool, right? A new kind of market for discovering the true price of information, something that businesses could even use to hedge against risk. But on the other hand, there's the argument that, well, isn't this just a fancy new form of gambling? And with that comes all the worries about addiction and some really tricky ethical questions when you start letting people bet on things like wars or political appointments. And that's really where we land. Polymarket's mission is to use money to incentivize the search for truth, to create a cleaner, pure signal about what's going to happen next. But it leaves all of us with a really profound and maybe even a little unsettling question to chew on. When every single outcome has a price, when you can trade the future in real time, what is the value of truth?